Have you ever considered that the most profound spiritual teachings might be hidden not in elaborate rituals or lengthy scriptures, but in simple words whispered in moments of darkness? What if Jesus, not the sanitized figure from Sunday school, but the radical mystic who challenged the powers of his time, left behind secret knowledge intended only for those with ears to hear? Perhaps the most transformative spiritual power lies not in what has been loudly proclaimed from pulpits for centuries, but in what has been deliberately concealed. Two words so potent that the rulers of this world trembled at their utterance. The truth we seek may not be found in the light that everyone can see, but in the shadows where genuine mysteries still reside. What if the Christianity you've known is merely the outer shell of a more profound teaching? One that was systematically removed from public knowledge because it threatened the very foundations of control. Tonight, as the veil between worlds thins, I invite you to consider that the path to genuine liberation might be simpler than you've been led to believe. In the silence between your thoughts, in that space where true power resides, two forgotten words await rediscovery. Words that could shatter the prison that has contained human consciousness for millennia. By the end of our journey together, you'll understand why these words were hidden, and how speaking them might finally set you free from the unseen watchers who have always been there, just beyond your perception. Deep within the Nag Hammadi library, ancient texts discovered in 1945 that the early church authorities tried desperately to destroy, lies a startling revelation. These fragile papyrus pages, buried for 16 centuries in the Egyptian desert, contain accounts of Jesus that bear little resemblance to conventional teachings. Among the most guarded secrets in these texts is the mention of two words Jesus taught only to his most trusted disciples, words meant to be spoken at the threshold between life and death, between waking and sleeping, between imprisonment and freedom. The Gospel of Philip and the Apocryphon of John hint at this secret teaching, describing how Jesus would sometimes speak privately to Thomas, Mary Magdalene, and others who were prepared to receive knowledge too dangerous for unprepared minds. And he took them aside, one passage reveals, and spoke words that, if written, would cause the cosmos itself to tremble. The Pistis Sophia manuscript further elaborates that Jesus provided specific utterances, sacred sounds, that would allow the soul to bypass the Archons, the cosmic gatekeepers who prevent human consciousness from returning to its divine source. This hidden knowledge was systematically erased from Orthodox Christianity during the Nicene Councils and subsequent purges, yet it survived in whispers, in coded texts, in the esoteric traditions that flowed beneath the surface of approved doctrine. The two words, which I will share with you before our time together concludes, were considered so powerful that merely knowing them was deemed heretical, punishable by excommunication or worse. If you feel drawn to this ancient wisdom, if something within you resonates with the possibility that there is more to spiritual reality than what you've been taught, then you are already awakening to your true nature. This channel serves as a sanctuary for those who sense that conventional religious teachings have withheld the most transformative secrets. Join us on this journey of remembrance by subscribing and activating notifications, not as a commercial transaction, but as a commitment to your own liberation. Each video we share is another piece of the cosmic puzzle, another step toward the complete remembrance of who you truly are. When you subscribe, you're not simply following content. You're connecting to an ancient current of knowledge that has been preserved despite centuries of suppression. You're declaring that you are ready to remember what your soul has always known, but your conditioned mind has forgotten. In the beginning, before time as we understand it, the universe existed in perfect unity, what the Gnostics called the pleroma, the fullness where no separation existed. From this divine source emanated the aeons, aspects of the unknowable God expressing themselves through cascading levels of consciousness. Among these was Sophia, wisdom herself, whose passionate desire to create led to a cosmic accident. Her incomplete creation gave birth to the Demiurge, a false god who believed himself to be the only deity. This Demiurge, whom some texts name Yaldabaoth, was blind to the true divine realm above him. In his ignorance and arrogance, he created the material world as a flawed copy of the perfect forms he dimly perceived. "I am God, and there is no other," he proclaimed, unaware that he was merely a shadow of true divinity. To maintain his illusion of supremacy, he fashioned servants, the Archons, cosmic rulers who share his ignorance and his desire for control. These Archons are not merely mythological figures, but representations of the forces that constrain human consciousness. They exist as energetic patterns, thought forms, and systemic structures that keep us trapped in limited awareness. In the Gnostic worldview, they stand at the boundaries between cosmic realms, challenging and often preventing souls from ascending beyond the material prison. The most profound aspect of this cosmology is that the Demiurge, in his flawed creation, unknowingly captured particles of divine light, sparks of the true God, and imprisoned them in human forms. This divine spark is our authentic nature, our true self that remains connected to the pleroma despite being buried beneath layers of forgetting. We are, in essence, fragments of divinity experiencing amnesia, divine beings who have forgotten our origin and purpose. Jesus, in this understanding, was an Aeon who voluntarily descended into the material realm, not to worship the Demiurge or reinforce his laws, but to awaken the divine spark within humanity. His mission wasn't to create another religion, but to provide the secret knowledge, the gnosis, that would allow humans to recognize and escape their cosmic prison. The two words he taught in secret were keys to bypass the Archons' checkpoints, passwords that would allow the awakened soul to return to its source. What if the Archons described in ancient texts are not distant mythological entities, but intimate aspects of our daily experience? Consider that these rulers might manifest as the very thought patterns that keep us small, afraid, and disconnected from our divine nature. The Demiurge's greatest deception may be convincing us that we are merely physical beings, temporary and insignificant, rather than eternal consciousness temporarily experiencing human form. The prison isn't built of stone and steel, but of beliefs and perceptions. The walls that contain us are constructed from fear of death, fear of meaninglessness, fear of being truly seen. Each time you accept a limitation as absolute truth, each time you identify completely with your personality rather than your essence, you reinforce these invisible barriers. The Archons don't need physical chains when belief systems work so effectively. The revolutionary understanding that emerges from Gnostic teachings is that salvation never required blood sacrifice or submission to arbitrary rules. Liberation comes through recognition, anamnesis, the undoing of forgetting. When you glimpse your true nature, even for a moment, the entire architecture of control begins to crumble. This is why genuine spiritual awakening has always been considered dangerous by those invested in maintaining the status quo. The two words Jesus taught weren't magical incantations, but vibrational keys that align human consciousness with its divine source. When spoken with full awareness, they create a resonance that the Archons cannot comprehend or intercept. They function as a kind of spiritual technology, realigning your energy field with frequencies beyond the Demiurge's creation. This is why they were hidden, not to keep people from salvation, but to protect this powerful knowledge until one was truly ready to use it responsibly. In our modern context, we might understand the Demiurge as the collective egoic consciousness that maintains separation and fear. The Archons become the thought forms and belief systems that patrol the boundaries of our awareness, challenging any expansion that threatens the established order. And the divine spark? That remains what it always was, your essential nature, the consciousness that witnesses the thoughts, emotions, and sensations that you typically identify as you. If this resonates with something deep within you, something beyond intellectual curiosity, then you're experiencing the stirring of that divine spark. When knowledge transitions from concept to recognition, from information to embodied truth, that's the beginning of gnosis. If these words are awakening that remembrance within you, acknowledge this moment of alignment by leaving a like on this video. This simple gesture isn't about algorithms or popularity. It's a declaration that something within you recognizes something within these words. It's a moment of saying yes to your own awakening. Each like becomes a beacon for others who are similarly seeking, creating a constellation of remembrance across the digital landscape. In the Gnostic tradition, recognition of truth was always meant to be shared, creating communities of remembrance that could sustain each other through the challenging process of awakening. By acknowledging this resonance, you strengthen not only your own connection to these teachings, but help preserve this knowledge for others who will find it when they're ready. The like button, in this context, becomes a modern form of the ancient practice of passing the flame from one seeker to another. Have you noticed how difficult it is to maintain awareness of your true nature in daily life? The constant demands for attention, the endless stimulation, the economic pressures. These aren't random aspects of modern living, but systematic methods of keeping consciousness fragmented and externally focused. When was the last time you sat in complete silence, free from screens and distractions, simply being present with your own existence? The Archons of our time don't need physical force to maintain control. They have notifications, breaking news, financial anxiety, and social comparison. Each ping on your phone pulls you from depth back to surface, from being to doing, from remembrance to forgetting. This isn't conspiracy, but simple mechanics of attention. Whatever captures your focus shapes your reality. And in a world designed to capture and monetize attention, your consciousness itself has become the commodity. You may have experienced moments when the veil thins, perhaps during meditation, in nature, in profound love, or even in great suffering. Those glimpses when you sense that reality is both more unified and more mysterious than ordinary perception suggests. These aren't hallucinations, but momentary alignments with your true nature, brief remembrances of what you've always been beneath the accumulated identities and conditioning. The two words Jesus taught are meant to be spoken in that liminal space between waking and sleeping, the hypnagogic state where consciousness is fluid and the rational mind's defenses are lowered. This threshold is when the Archons are least able to maintain their influence, when the boundaries between realms are most permeable. Ancient practitioners knew that this twilight consciousness provides direct access to deeper realities typically obscured during full wakefulness. What keeps you from experiencing your divine nature isn't lack of effort or worthiness, but simply forgetting to remember. The spiritual journey isn't about becoming something new, but recognizing what has always been present. As one Gnostic text states, if you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. The Gnostic understanding of Jesus reveals him not as a sacrifice to appease an angry deity, but as a messenger carrying the codes for human liberation. His teachings, especially those hidden from public doctrine, focused on awakening the divine spark within each person. The kingdom of heaven is within you, he declared, pointing not to an afterlife destination, but to the immediate potential for awakened consciousness. When we integrate these ancient insights with our lived experience, a profound synthesis emerges. The cosmic drama of Sophia, the Demiurge, and the Archons becomes a map of our own psyche, the divine spark entrapped in matter, seeking to remember its origin. The material world isn't evil, but incomplete, a partial expression of reality that becomes problematic only when mistaken for the whole. Liberation doesn't require rejecting physical existence, but seeing through its exclusive claims on reality. The body, emotions, and thoughts are not obstacles to spiritual awakening, but vehicles through which awakening expresses itself. In this integrated understanding, even the Archons serve a purpose, providing the resistance that strengthens our resolve to awaken, the contrast that helps us recognize our true nature. The two words Jesus taught contain this complete understanding in seed form. When spoken with full presence, they activate a remembrance that ripples through all levels of your being. They align body, emotion, mind, and spirit into coherence, a state where the artificial boundaries between you and the divine dissolve, revealing that separation was always an illusion maintained through forgetting. This remembrance doesn't make you special. It reveals that you always were what you sought. As one Gnostic text beautifully states, if you knew who walked beside you on this path you have chosen, fear would be impossible. The divine isn't distant, but immediate, not separate, but intrinsic to your very awareness. Perhaps now you understand why these teachings were hidden. Not because they were false, but because they were too true, too threatening to systems that require your forgetting to maintain their power. The revolution Jesus initiated wasn't political, but perceptual, not a changing of rulers, but the recognition that true authority has always resided within the awakened heart. The prison you believed was your inevitable reality now reveals itself as a construct of thought, maintained through collective agreement. And the freedom you sought through external paths now shows itself as your original nature, accessible not through striving, but through remembering. The journey that seemed to stretch before you endlessly now reveals itself as the simple recognition of what has always been here, waiting patiently for your attention to return home. The two words Jesus taught to his closest disciples, the words that the Archons cannot comprehend, are simply, I am. When spoken at the threshold between worlds, with full presence and clear intention, these words activate the divine recognition that transcends all constructed identities. They are not magic, but recognition, the simplest and most profound truth of your existence. Tonight, as you lie in bed, in that space between waking and sleeping, speak these words not as an affirmation, but as recognition. Feel the resonance they create, not as something new entering you, but as your own essence being acknowledged. This is the key that unlocks the gates, the password that the Archons cannot process because it contains the very awareness they lack. What began as a paradox now resolves into clarity. The secret was never truly hidden. It was simply waiting for you to be ready to hear it. The words that seemed so mysterious are ultimately the simplest acknowledgement of your true nature, and the liberation that appeared distant is revealed as the very awareness with which you're reading these words. What has shifted for you during our time together? Has something awakened that was dormant before? Share your experience in the comments below with the word remembered, followed by the insight that most resonated with your soul. This isn't merely interaction, but continuation of an ancient practice, the sharing of gnosis that strengthens all who participate. Your words may become the key that unlocks recognition for another seeker, continuing the unbroken chain of awakening that has persisted despite all attempts to sever it.